for 8.5 years. I was the Speaker of the House my last two. I've been out for a year now, but I've never campaigned statewide, so I'm still new enough at this to get embarrassed when people clap for me. On the other hand, you can bring that coffee right over here. Is that mine? Yeah, thank you. It's perfect. He said it's not Cuban. It's like 4 of these equals one of those little shot things. So nothing wrong with caffeine. Thank you guys for doing it. I really appreciate it. I know I was supposed to be here a couple months ago, and I'm sorry I didn't make it then, but I'm glad to be here now. Because things are much clearer now than they were even 2 months ago about what's happening in American life and in our country. And so first, I feel blessed and honored for the opportunity to be here with you today. I always, when I talk to groups like this, I'm always a little bit, I always try to preview it by saying, look, I know I'm about to preach to the proverbial choir, but what I try to give you some insight, because I'm all over the state, so I'm talking to people everywhere. And I guess what I want to do is give you encouragement, because if you turn on the television and you're watching what comes out of New York or Hollywood, sometimes maybe you'd be tempted to believe that there aren't others like you out there, that basically you are alone or that you're in the minority. And I guess what I want to start by telling you today is you are not in the minority. Your voices, your fears, your hopes find themselves well within the mainstream of American life. The things you are going to tell me later today before I leave, the stuff you were talking about before I walked in, that's what people are talking about everywhere. I get the same questions every part of the state. Same questions in Pensacola and Miami, sometimes just in a different language, but same questions. Same aspirations for their children and their future. Same concerns about the direction of America. You know, we come here today as people of faith, and there's a great debate in America constantly about what role does faith have in public life. I think there's no better evidence of what faith's role should be in public life than the founding of our nation. This was not founded as a theocracy, that is true. It was founded by people who had seen firsthand what happens when the state picks a religion and imposes it upon people. But it was founded by people who understood the importance of faith. In fact, they understood it because the justification of this nation is rooted in faith. It's a very simple concept. Today we take it for granted. People like me that were born in this country, raised here our whole life, sometimes we take it for granted. But when they wrote it, it was hard to take it for granted because, in fact, writing those words were considered treason. Here's what they wrote. They said that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Think about what that meant back 230 some odd years ago. Today, we don't even know it's in there. Too many of our children, quite frankly, aren't taught what that meant when that declaration was written. But when those words were written, the vast majority of people in the world, in fact, the vast majority of people that had ever lived, were born into societies where they were told that they had no rights that belonged to them. The only rights they had were whatever rights the king had allowed them to have, or whatever rights the government allowed them to have. In fact, many people were ruled by people who believed that it was God himself who made them king or queen or emperor, and that they could do with you as they pleased. That basically whatever was going to happen to you in your life was the direct result of whatever government allowed to happen. That the source of your rights were your leaders and your government, not your Creator. But the founders of our nation believed very differently. They believed in what some call natural law, but in essence, it's this notion that every human being on the planet, by the way, not just in the United States, is born with rights that are unique and belong to them. And that it is the role of government to protect those rights. That is the reason why we have a government, is to protect those rights. It goes on to say that the only power government has is the power that the people allow that government to have. Now people say, well, those are words on a piece of paper. But those principles in America were actually brought into life. First through a document called the Constitution. You may have heard of it. Nowadays, sometimes it's often neglected. But more importantly, the American economic system. The American economic system realized that every human being has inherent value. That in essence, every person in America has God-given ambitions and abilities. In fact, every person in the world. And that they should have the liberty to work hard to accomplish those ambitions by using their God-given abilities. It doesn't always work the way you want it. For example, I wanted to play in the National Football League, and I would have, had it not been for my lack of size, speed, and talent.